Hey everybody, my name is Michael, and by the way, I'm going to keep this presentation pretty kind of relaxed, and it'll be mostly just demos and talking a little bit about how we built Tambo. So Tambo is an open source project. So everything I talk about, you can go look at the code, you can run it, host it yourself. We do have a cloud environment, but it's also self-hostable. So just something to keep in mind is like one of the reasons I'm going into some of the detail is that you can kind of see how it's built if you would like to, fork it, build your own thing. So who here has heard of Generative UI? Raise your hand. Okay, most people have. Who here has built anything that has Generative UI in it? Okay, a lot fewer hands. Who here wants to build something with Generative UI in it? Okay, a little bit more. Okay, okay, I'll explain it. So if you don't know what it is. And then the second thing I would say is who here thinks Generative UI is a terrible idea? Like it shouldn't exist? Okay, a couple people. I thought there'd be more people that would be really against it, but I guess not. Okay, so a little bit about myself, and I bring this up just to give some context. So I built user-facing products, so analytics for employers at Indeed, search products at Convoy for truckers. So I did like product-facing stuff, and then I also worked on developer tooling. And the reason I bring this up is that every single one of these companies had roughly the same problem that we'd been solving roughly the same way for the last 30 years. We might have made it look a little bit better, design was a little bit better, we spent a lot more time researching, talking to customers, trying to figure out how to make it easier to use. But ultimately, every single one of these suffered from a few core problems. So one is discovery. How do you surface the right feature to the right user at the right time? Literally, we spent hours, maybe months in meeting rooms talking about navigation bars and menus and like whose app got to show up where and when, and we never ever got it right. So it's like one really core problem that I've seen across almost every application that gets to any moderate amount of complexity or power. And then another big problem that like most apps run into is you want to keep the user experience simple enough that somebody can just start using it, and then you have really like high-end power users and users all the way in between that. And with like most like modern apps have to really just pick one of those two poles. They either build something that's really generic for everybody, or they have to build an app that's really complex. You have to get a bunch of trainings on how to use it. And then all these problems are being solved roughly the same way. Writing documentation, we were just talking about documentation, having people read your documentation, having training, having somebody at the company actually just explain to you how to use the product. And all of these are like not super great solutions to this problem. They work, we've been doing them in the past, but I think that Generative UI offers some like really great opportunities to solve these products in like new and different ways. And I think, I kind of already mentioned this a little bit, but like the traditional UI is people have to click around through your app to find things. They have to like find something in the nav bar, click around to find it, like get a training or like watch a YouTube video of how to use it. And Generative UI is like totally different, where you're actually surfacing the interface that user needs given their context. Context could be, hey, I'm trying to do this task. What tools do you have available to help me do that? I could walk you through a workflow. I could pull up the graph and put in just the right fields you need to see the data that you're looking at. And so it's like kind of a different paradigm to solve some of those core problems that I mentioned before. So actually, I'm going to have a lot of demos throughout mine just because I think it's a lot more fun to see something in demo form. Actually, wait. All right, so this is an app that one of our developers built in this like first week that he joined. Has anyone ever heard of the app or the REPL called Strudel? Okay, a few people have. So I don't know anything about making music. I somehow skipped out on all the like music classes as a kid. But this is basically it's like a language for writing, for basically writing music. And so I can actually press play on this. And we'll see if you can you all hear that? Can you raise your hand? Can you hear that? Okay, cool. All right, so it has a simple beat, but maybe I want to do something else like, actually, somebody give me a song. Just any song. happy by, say it again? Oh, Pharrell. I don't know, how close is that to happy? Not super close, is it? But so one thing I like about this is, so I don't know how, I literally don't know how any of this stuff works, but I can start trying different things with it and maybe learning what each individual thing does as I start working with it. So this is like a really powerful language for writing, and actually people make real live music with this. This is not just like a toy.
Zoom in on that window a little bit.
Oh yeah, sure. Can people see that all right? But this is like a real powerful tool for, I'll turn it down a little bit, for making music. But somebody can just immediately start getting into it, start building something, seeing how something works, see some suggestions. Maybe we could do it oh yeah, it could actually start explaining to me what are these instrument choices, why did it choose that? I could have it change something about this. Yeah, so it's explaining I guess these are different samples. Talks about the hi-hats. I could probably even ask it what does gain mean? Oh, sorry. I could also have it kind of interact with this app. I could make it change it. Maybe say speed it up a little bit. Oh, sorry. And so basically, what I love about this is that we can go from something that is really, I can start out with not knowing how anything works. I can start building something right away. I can also interact with this. I could change the numbers here. Not really sure what that did. Maybe I'll change the beat. That's probably easier to tell. Oh. I might have to reset it. Yeah, I can hear it. But yeah, all I have to say is basically what I'm trying to get at is that this is a totally new way of building apps where you have both the kind of natural language interface allowing you to control it, just describing what you want, but then you can also use the actual interface in the way that it's designed to use it. So if I got really proficient at Strudel, I could change different things really quickly, or if there's something I want to just iterate on really quick, I can play around with it. And I think we're going to see a lot more UIs like this in the future. How do I go back? Sorry. Oh, I should pause that. All right. Awesome. Okay. So one of the things that I've been thinking about in this space is this idea that one of the problems with traditional UIs is that complexity increases as you basically add more features, right? And you see this across every app. So why does Google have Gmail, Google Sheets, Google Docs? They got so complicated they had to split it out into different applications, right? But what if you could use generative UI to bring all those applications back together, right? I'm in my Google Meets. I just tell it, hey, I would like to start taking notes. It pulls up a Google Doc. Maybe it remembers the last time I did this. It remembers how I titled the Google Doc. It remembers that I always add these two sections. So I think there's this great opportunity to create these applications that as the features and functionality increase, the complexity actually gets to a certain point where it kind of stops. People understand how it works, understands how to bring back apps, how to personalize the interface for their use case. So for example, you have the Meets example. What if my Meets, I could customize how it looks and feels based on how I use Google or video chats, for lack of a better term. All right, so what is Tambo? So Tambo is a React SDK for generative UI. And our guiding principles with Tambo was that you should be able to bring your own UI components. So one of the things that we really focused on early on was be able to take an existing application, take the existing components, and register them such that the AI assistant could either render the components in line, I'll talk a little bit more of that in a second, or interact with components on the screen. And that's an example, the Strudel example is closer to that, where I have a UI, and I'm interacting with that via natural language. Also, we were building this for full stack engineers. I think the the current, like a lot of the current tech products, I feel like were really built more for like back-end engineers or ML engineers. And so we've really focused on trying to make Tambo feel like something like a React SDK that you would be using in a front-end application. And then also being able to get to 0 to 1 in minutes, not hours. So we literally have people who like found us on a Friday, taken our starter template, added their own components from their B2B SaaS app, and created a demo and showed it to like their entire engineering org on a Monday. So just trying to make it like really fast to get from concept to an actual example of generative UI in your own application. All right, so this is going to look really complicated, but this is like a pretty high-level overview of the Tambo architecture. So you can see it kind of starts with the message, and within every message, we pass over all the UI components. So you can think of it like you basically register components. I'll show you some code of how you do that. We also have this concept of what we call like local tools. So this is where you can basically have the AI assistant basically like have any or run any Java or any arbitrary JavaScript in the client. So that could be useful for making fetches like how you normally do, or updating the state of something, or like handling auth. There's like a bunch of stuff that you can do that you typically just do with some JavaScript. You can have that run as a tool. We also support MCP both on the client side and on the server side. So you can register MCPs. There's like benefits to either one. I won't go into a lot of detail about that, but core thing is we support MCP. We also don't just support MCP. I'll go into more detail. We don't just support MCP tools. We actually support almost everything in MCP: resources, prompts, elicitation. So if you're very familiar with MCP, I'll show you some demos of that later. But oh wow, I'm out of time way faster than I anticipated. All right, so I'm trying to think where I want to land on this. All right, so this is like the basic architecture. What Tambo does is it keeps the agent in sync so that it understands, what generative UI components it has available to it to render. It'll start generating messages. Sometimes it'll make tool calls on the client side or call MCPs on the server side. Sometimes it will return back UI components. It kind of depends on what you're trying to do. This is an example of a Tambo tool. It looks very similar to creating an MCP tool or an OpenAI tool. These are run on the client side. We also have MCP, which I mentioned. We have it on the client side and the server side. Most of the people using it, when they're adding their own APIs, are just adding MCPs on the server side. And then we have these two concepts of components. So one is an ephemeral component. So this is something that gets rendered inside the chat, usually to accomplish a specific task. So, hey, I just have a question and I want to get some data back. I want to pull up the right UI to change my notification settings. That's what you might use an ephemeral component for, or a persistent component. And so both of these get registered in slightly different ways. So I didn't explain persistent component. Persistent component is a component that's like basically rendered on the page that you want the assistant to interact with. The first one you register with a provider, a React provider, and that gets passed along with every message. And then the other one gets passed as a HOC, if you're familiar with that, and basically the tools only get passed whenever that particular component is rendered on the page. And then we also have these additional context helpers. And so these are used for basically if you want to like pass any extra data alongside the message. So a lot of times we're using this for getting information, what page they're on, or what's the browser language, or different like types of context that you would want to pass along with the message so that the assistant knows like what's going on the page. And then I had a few more demos, but I'm definitely running out of time. So this one is also public, so if you want to check it out. So this is a AI-powered spreadsheet. By the way, it's like, it's not a full replacement for Google Sheets, but it has a lot of the same features. You can have it generate charts. You can have it create tables with formulas. But this is another great example of being able to give people a quick starter. I can just say, hey, generate. In this case, I think I'm generating basically a loan payback statement, and it's using all these different formulas to like get the right numbers. This is another template we have, which is basically an analytics canvas. So it can generate the components like in an ephemeral way, and then you can move it to a canvas that the AI or the chat can interact with. So I could like move this pie chart over, and then I could ask it to update the chart. Oh, and this was just an example of elicitation. So who here is familiar with MCP elicitations? Okay, not very many people. But MCP actually has a bunch of really cool features that we basically have embedded into this React client. So if your MCP client supports it, elicitations, resources, prompts, we will actually like render that properly. And this is all customizable. You can change how it looks and feels. But we handle that all out of the box. And we have a UI library that handles like all of the basic kind of framing of the app, as well as has a couple of generative components as examples that you can get started with.
Well, want to take some questions?
Yes, and I know I'm over time, so I'm going to leave it there. But yeah, if I had more time, I'd have given more demos. But yeah, if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions over here?
Hey, I didn't fully get the Strudel example and how it's a generative UI. Like, for example, if I go to an AI browser, I open up Strudel, I have a chat window, I can get it to write a song, right? So I guess it's something that happens under the hood, like the tools that you expose from the web app. Could you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Strudel example, I forgot to like demo it in the actual app, but so it has a mix of like these ephemeral components and a persistent component, or we call it like an interactable. So the actual REPL is an interactable. So when I chat with it, it knows that that component is rendered on the screen, and then it basically updates the state. Like the assistant knows how to update the state of that interactable. And you define all that with Zod schemas, or I think now we support like standard schema and a bunch of other like TypeScript schema systems. But then the generative components, those are actual UI components that you register with the provider, similar to how you might register something on a page, so that when the assistant wants to render it, it knows like, hey, here's where the component lives, here's the props that component expects, and how I can fill those props in. And then we also have state management. So if I interact with that component, like the example I have is some like selector bots. So when I click on the select, it knows the state of that. If it was a slider, like anything that you can do, the use Tambo state is a drop-in replacement for like the React state manager, use state. Yeah.
Hi. Here. Great demo. But it made me a little bit confused about generative UI versus conversational UI.
Yeah.
So in my mind or an experience, like a generative UI are the UI that kind of a mold based on the data. So it kind of in real time or runtime, it generates the UI. But what I see is more like a conversational UI. We are registering a bunch of components in a conversation, and then you are making making it work in a conversational way. Is this?
Yeah. So actually, this is something I probably should mention in my like demo. But basically, so the way that we think about it is that generative UI is a very broad category of I think it should be defined as a pretty broad category. The way that we think about it is that like right now, just like where most things are at, it's most products are being built this like with the idea of like a message, and then the message is context, and then it starts generating. What we want to eventually get to is that your actual UI might be driven by a bunch of other types of context. So like I'm in a meeting, I start saying something, or like a notification comes in, I might start having the UI like update in chains basically just based on that. But even when that's happening, effectively under the hood, it's still this kind of like message structure, right? Something is triggering, some context is triggering a render. And then I know there's like one school of thought that's basically like, hey, we'll just have LLMs generate code for everything on the fly. And I think that might exist, but I definitely feel, I think that like when I see like the best products out there today, most of them are using like tools. And so we think of UI as tools. All right, I'll stop there.
All right, let's all give it up for Tambo.
Thanks.
And yeah, I need to point out and send some accolades for the, oh yeah, you can come on ahead. But he did a live demo in localhost, very brave, and the demo gods were in his favor.